Welcome to the Equity.Guru Investor Roundtable. Today, we're talking about Filament Health, we believe out of Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm Rob Simpson. Just below me is Chris Perry. Just below him is Vishal Tura. And in the bottom bunk today, TK Indochina. Gentlemen, Vishal, what are we talking about when we're talking about filament?
Psychedelic medicines, which are naturally derived. And I got to plug in this piece here by Piers, a great piece here underlying that this company is a natural psychedelic company, which is flying under the radar, and they are focusing on the organic extraction. Big news lately was the fact that they're the first Canadian psilocybin. They got the first patent for the extraction of psilocybin, and basically, what Pierce says in his article is you can't patent something organic or natural, but you can patent the extraction, and that's what Filament has done.
Speaking of flying under the radar, we weren't even sure where they were located. We had to dig into their contact list to realize that they're actually in Vancouver. And also, the NEO exchange is something that kind of flies under the radar as well. Chris, you got a lot going on here, sort of.
Yeah, look, I've never had a lot of time for the NEO exchange. It was came out with lots of promises that it was going to be different from everybody else, but it seemed to just be a place where ETFs went to park, or companies that didn't really want folks looking under the hood. 2021, we're in a different time, and companies really have their pick of where they can land now. It's not like the old days where the TSX Venture used to tell cannabis companies to come back in 6 months. In terms of filament, everything psychedelics, I think back to the cannabis industry and how it became what it is. And that early green rush where every broker was like talking to biker gangs, trying to figure out who didn't have a criminal record and knew how to grow weed. We're in that same space with psychedelics where everyone's got a psychedelic deal if they've bought a mushroom farm out in Langley. These guys are going the research route. They've got connections with BCIT. They've got connections with other schools where they're actively working on trials of both psilocybin and non-psilocybin. I think this is one area. Cannabis, everyone just wanted to basically smoke and get stoned. That was really what it was all about, regardless of the research claims and medical. Psychedelics, we're going straight to a place where the extractors know what they're doing now, right? So if you get a Health Canada license to extract psilocybin, it's not because you got lucky in a group of 150 applicants. It's because you've actually shown that you know what you're doing. And so I think it's a really good sign for Filament that they've got patent approved, they've got the dealer's license, they've got things going through trials. Amongst all the mess of psychedelics, this looks like an actual deal.
Okay. Chris, can I ask you?
Go ahead.
I got a question. Like I was reading here about Piers. He's saying a lot of the products are basically fake, right? Like, is there such thing as organic shrooms already? I bought this shrooms, and again, I'm just a beginner microdoser, but it does say organic mushrooms on the label. But is that a mislabel, you think, or?
Well, I'd be surprised if they were certified organic, if they're the kind of mushrooms that I like to dabble in. But look, it's like CBD, right? You're going to get a lot of products that when CBD first started appearing, it was going to be the wonder drug, and there were thousands of companies doing it. You could buy it on Amazon, but it was supposed to be illegal, and mushrooms are the same. You can get legal mushroom extracts that are really good for you. You can get mushroom coffee, you can get all these sorts of things. What people really want is the ability to, one, fix their PTSD or other psychological issues with something that actually does work. And two, go down to Third Beach Drum Circle and get shit-faced for an evening watching the sky turn orange and green, right? So this is really what we're coming to. So everyone's talking about the medical use right now because that's the permitted use. Yeah. The realistic thing is mushrooms are great. Like, mushrooms fixed a lot of my life issues in the last couple of years. And realistically, the reason the cops aren't busting people for using them is because there's really no negative effect other than, who you might end up with in the morning.
TK, what's your analysis?
Honestly, yeah, there's not much since they don't put out their info, and that's where I'm gonna come in and play the devil's advocate here. Where if I was trying to put in $5,000 into it, I wouldn't know much. But that's just my bias, where I would be gambling on the management team to be able to actually address the total market and stuff like that. Which is there's so many variables to that, but there is a market for it, like Chris is saying. It's just how effective are they to actually be the top player in the field when anybody can come in, and you don't need the patent just to put through the products. That's the only part I was like, oh, okay, I can see why they would go through the NEO exchange to try build some traffic before they put the information out there.
Sounds sketchy. Is that unfair, or is it just a function of the way this, or is that just a function of the way this sector is developing?
That's pretty much it. That's like, there's no one in the psychedelic space that is going to have nobody saying, yeah, this is sketchy. It's like, no matter how many guys with leather arm patches they have on their jacket, and smoking cigars in the tenured staff room. It's still a largely illegal enterprise, right? It's a lot more legal now than it used to be, and there's a pathway for it being legal. And companies like Filament that have actually gone out and got their dealer's license and can be at least developing products in that space are much closer to where they want to be than a lot of others. There's a lot of bullshit in psychedelics, like a ton of it. And it sucks because when you get the guys that actually do have patented technology and do have, some research behind them and do have the connections to the big schools, they're standing side by side with the guys that don't, with the deal guys from Howe Street that have taken a mining shell and turned it into a psychedelic shell, and suddenly they get a 500% lift. This is cannabis 2014 all over again, and the same rules apply. You find the guys that are doing legitimate work, you find the guys that aren't overpromising, you find the guys that are reasonable valuation, and you wait for those guys to prove themselves over time.
Michelle, you got anything to throw out from a visual standpoint?
Right, yeah, so just in terms of the charts, I mean, this thing Filament just IPO'd on June 24th, and echoing what TK said, there's no financial statements out just yet because it's relatively new. And as you can see here on the stock charts too, it's just really been ranging here between 28 cents to 35 here on the upside. Could be a bit of a break, but a breakout, that's what I mean. But if I was going to put money in this, I might just wait a little bit because I believe their clinical trials are going to be out later this year in Q3. I just want to share this picture though in Piers' article here, where he compares the synthetic psilocybin formulas versus the extraction of natural psilocybin. And as you can see, Filament's on its own path here. So I think the story is exciting, but I might just wait a little bit more on news in terms of clinical trials before I would invest in something that's just IPO'd recently.
Both CP and TK are nodding. So does that mean go TK first? You're also gonna wait and see?
Yeah, for this one, I'd rather wait and see. Because honestly, we struggled to find just the address earlier. But that's just probably the management team is still trying to set themselves apart from the rest of the industry to actually control their narrative. And that's something I'd love to see develop over time, to kind of see how they're taking it and how they want to set themselves apart.
Yeah, I mean, look, on the address front, I know one of our friends at a technology company that's been going for 5 years only just got their first office. We live in a time when it's possible to do a lot of work remotely, especially if what you're doing is research. So I'd say that, this is a company that's putting its feet on the ground perhaps for the first time publicly, and there's going to be some hiccups. And that might be a reason to, wait and see a little bit. Certainly, the chart is flat up for a little dip there. But, if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it a year, 2 years down the road. Do I think that this company is likely to rise from this point in a year's time? I'd say almost absolutely. If the trials that they're doing flesh out and they get the results that they're looking for and certainly think they're going to get, that'd be very strong. The thing with biotech companies, and I think people really need to separate the psychedelics from the biotech. this is a biotech company, right? This is a company that is looking to make pharmaceuticals. The third beach scenario is probably not going to happen for a while, but in the meantime, there's an industry to be had in doing pharmaceuticals right. In biotech, you wait a long time for a day where things actually come together, and the stock can really drag out over a long period. There's no news other than we're still in trials, and then one morning you wake up, find the thing's up 80%, the trials went well, and you're off to the races. So locking in, at maybe $1,000 here at this price, I don't think is a risky thing. All you're really worried about is opportunity cost. Are you going to be waiting too long for Filament to start rising than you might if you had it in, say, a silver company? I'm a long-term guy. I don't trade as much as I look to what is it going to take for this company to double. And I think, one, if the psychedelic sector goes on a bit of a tear, let's say if the laws liberalize, that's a tide that rises all boats. And two, is the market cap realistic right now? Is a $50 million market cap right now for what they have? Probably sounds about right, considering comparables in the sector. I don't think it's undervalued. I don't think it's overvalued. I think it's probably just about right, which is why you're seeing that flat chart. Now, throw a couple more pieces of news out, progress things a little bit more, get something through trials. It's add a digit to the end of that market cap.
All right, so I think the old disclaimer, given their history and their youth, that the old past performance doesn't guarantee future results disclaimer necessarily applies here, but I can say that everyone should do their own research out there. These gentlemen are experts and great advisors and educators, but check out your own stuff and make your own investments consciously on your own, folks. We hope you've enjoyed this. While you're doing your research, folks, myself, CP, TK, and Vishal are going to run out and check out some orange and green drummers. Yeah. We'll see you next time on the Equity Guru.
TK is a mushroom fiend. He won't admit it, but he's a fiend.
I got some in the drawer over here. This is the Equity Guru Investor Roundtable. See ya.